Hello. In this video, I want to look at a short article by Sarah Kaplan and Eric Beinhocker called The Real Value of Strategic Planning. It appeared in the MIT Sloan Management Review in the winter of 2003. Now, recent academic strategy articles on strategic planning are few, particularly following Mintzberg's devastating critique of the planning school in his Rise and Fall of Strategic Planning. Yet despite this, virtually all firms of any size still engage in a formal strategic planning process that includes financial planning and budgeting. Indeed, the popular view is that this is how strategy is done. Analyse your environment, choose your strategy, link it to objectives and goals, plan budgets and operations, link to incentive schemes, and monitor progress. The same people, of course, usually then comment on how their firm is really bad at it and that outcome never match plans. But if this is the case, why keep this choreographed ritual? Many recent articles on strategy play to a more organic, emergent view of strategy process. However, rather than completely dismiss the value of strategic planning, it is worth a deeper look. After all, Mintzberg does say that strategy walks on 2 feet, deliberate and emergent. Hence, Kaplan and Beinhocker's exploration of what really makes a good formal strategic planning process is worth considering. The authors start the article with the criticisms. Despite significant amounts of time and effort put into formal annual strategic plans, for many managers it seems a lot like a tribal dance with chanting and waving feathers and beating of drums, with some mystical hope that something good will come out of it. Or like the old communist systems, pretend to make strategy, then pretend to follow it. Indeed, Kaplan and Beinhocker's research does show that rarely do strategic decisions come out of a formal planning process. But this does not mean that it is a waste of time. We should see the prime purpose of this process as not to generate strategy, but as a learning tool. They paraphrase this with one of my own favourite quotations: "Chance favours the prepared mind." Business, we can all agree, is often unpredictable. And it is as that unpredictable happens that the most important strategic decisions are made. Too often, though, companies react poorly at these times of pressure. Discussions are based merely on opinions rather than facts, and decisions end up being purely gut feel. With this in mind, the authors say the goal of formal strategic planning should be to ensure key decision makers have a solid understanding of the business, share a common fact base, and agree on important assumptions, so are all on the same page. I'm reminded here of the real story behind Shell's use of scenario planning, which we'll come back to. To do this, you have to get the process right. Most strategic planning processes are built around a set of annual meetings, annual reviews, during which the Chief Executive Officer and senior corporate team members review the strategies of the company's business units, and often those of functional units, with the outcome of the process often signed off by the firm's board. Kaplan and Beinhocker highlight that often the meetings that form this process are seen as interrogations by the Chief Executive Officer. business unit managers summoned to headquarters and grilled in some kind of game of gotcha. Business unit managers on the defensive, protecting their businesses and their careers against corporate staff looking to prove their worth by revealing skeletons in the cupboard. The authors implore that instead the process should be about promoting open conversations, one that is a two-way street in which key participants learn and challenge from each other. So, aiding to overcome many of the cognitive biases that we've talked about elsewhere, but also ensuring that strategy is forced onto the agenda of busy managers as they fight immediate operational challenges. With this in mind, the article then steps through some of the key questions to ask in setting up an effective formal strategic planning process. They start with who should attend. Real conversations take place in groups of between 3 people and 10 people. They do not happen in larger groups for both logistical and political reasons. People simply cannot participate meaningfully. With 20 people, an individual can only contribute for 3 minutes in every hour. As a result, hierarchy will likely come into play, and you will see posturing and politicking. Despite this, many seek inclusivity. They bring in groups as big as 30 or 40 to their strategy review meetings, only for them then to feel like a slideshow rather than a real dialogue about critical business issues. In reality, only 2 people are really needed in a business unit review: the Chief Executive Officer and the business unit head. Typically, in an effective process, others might include corporate CFO, head of HR, 1 or 2 senior corporate executives, and 2 or 3 senior members from the business unit team. The corporate head of strategy usually then facilitates the conversation. So between 5 and 10, 12 at the maximum. Now, others will fight to be included, but they should be briefed through other forums to make sure their buy-in is attained. Review meetings should not be less than a day. The purpose is to have in-depth strategy discussions, and there are simply too many topics to cover otherwise. Less time prevents careful prodding and poking of issues. The emphasis should be on the long-term opportunities, challenges and decisions rather than on the immediate budgets and financial targets. Other separate meetings should be set up to discuss such issues, although it is imperative that strategy is linked to a 5 to 7 year financial plans and that strategic initiatives are tied to budgets. Too often, strategy lacks this connection and so never happens. The authors advise that meetings should be held at the business unit's premises, so it feels less like a summons, and also that by the chief executive travelling, it emphasises the importance. The main purpose of the process is to challenge the strategy by testing assumptions made about the market and exploring the opportunities and risks that exist. The emphasis needs to be on questions about the scope of the firm and the choices that are made, and also importantly, that are being rejected. Remember, strategy is as much about what you choose not to do as what you do choose to do. Also, questions on the process by which strategy has been developed and is being implemented. However, the tone of the meeting will be driven by the company's culture. For some hard-nosed, but others more genteel and collegiate. But too aggressive and the environment descends into an us versus them battle. On the other hand, too genteel and little insight is revealed and issues are glossed over or buried. The trick is to find the right balance of depth and of challenge and make preparation absolutely necessary by the participants. So not outsourced to staff people. Documents should be ready at least a week before the review meetings, prepared to guidelines required by the headquarters, although in these, latitude to allow business units to express their unique character and also demonstrate competence. Follow-up is also essential, both in tying long-term goals to shorter-term budgets and HRM strategies, and the implications and commitments made need to form the starting point for future rounds of review. So the output does matter. The success or failure of the process should not be judged by whether written plans were good or everyone felt good afterwards, or even if big decisions were made. Instead, the criteria should be on whether participants came out of the review better prepared for the ongoing job of strategy decision making. To demonstrate, Kaplan and Beinhocker give the example of an international industrial goods company suddenly faced with the opportunity to acquire two large businesses in Germany, where it was not currently a significant player. In order to succeed, the firm had to take some risky decisions. However, in the strategy planning process, the headquarters and business unit teams had engaged in extensive discussions on the German market and the strategic fit of any opportunity. The company was therefore able to move quickly and out-negotiate slower moving rivals. Prepared minds also helps firms reject moves, despite perhaps the siren calls of investment bankers and shareholders, and seeing others act in a certain way. Discussions played out in the strategic planning process pay off both in terms of the insight generating and ensuring that the business unit, the headquarters, and often the board are on the same page. Kaplan and Beinhocker finished the article stressing that strategic planning should not be dismissed as a tribal ritual that wastes time, but as a critical task for senior corporate and business unit managers. It should be positioned and seen in the firm as a learning process that helps managers make more solidly grounded strategic decisions with greater commitment to the choices taken or rejected. So what do we take from Kaplan and Beinhocker's article? Well, it does suggest how, despite all the disappointment and criticism, a formal strategic planning process can play a valuable role no matter how emergent the strategy that is pursued is. As Pasteur says, luck favours the prepared mind. So it is with organisations. Success favours the prepared management team. There is here, as I said, a strong link to how Shell used scenarios, gaining during unprecedented shifts in oil price. It was not through having scenarios that predicted what would happen and deliberately planning for it. Instead, by formally engaging managers across the business in the potential of what could happen. It was such that when it did happen, they were far quicker to understand what was going on and respond in real time. So as Mintzberg says, perhaps we need both a deliberate as well as an emergent approach to strategy process. Thank you for listening.